Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be discussing the way, or the Tao. If you are new here, my name is Fakery, and the goal is to remove the dust from our minds. In this video, we'll be discussing Nansen's ordinary mind is the way. Joshu asked Nansen, what is the Tao? Ordinary mind is the Tao, replied Nansen. Shall I try to seek after it? If you try for it, you will be separated from it. How can I know the Tao unless I try for it? Nansen said, the Tao is not a matter of knowing or not knowing. Knowing is delusion, not knowing is confusion. When you really reach the true Tao beyond doubt, you will find it as vast and boundless as space. How can it be talked about on the level of right and wrong? With these words, Joshu came to a sudden realization. Amazing. So, the Tao, it's very simple, it's very clear. The Tao is the ordinary mind, and if you know it, you have been deluded. If you don't know it, you've been confused. The ordinary mind, it could mean a couple different things in this sense. So the ordinary mind could be the mind as it is right now. Ordinary mind, how it is typically. What you think, generally, your mind as it normally is, that's the Tao. You've reached it, you've already achieved the way. You've already reached the truth. You've already seen reality. It's just your mind. That's one way to look at it. Another way would be slightly more difficult. The ordinary mind would be the mind before it is defiled, the mind without any dust. When you clean off all of the unnecessary parts, or any of the parts, remove all that, and then you have the ordinary mind, the mind before anything, the clear, clean mind. That takes a lot of practice. That takes a lot of specific type of meditation, right? You need to meditate first to become comfortable with everything that is there, and then you want to be able to see, to feel, to understand when it all drops away. Because often the mind does return to the ordinary mind. It's just that we don't understand, we don't realize it, we don't notice it. So it's a really difficult skill to cultivate, to actually feel when the mind returns back to its original state. So I really love this quote. Knowing is delusion, not knowing is confusion. This is pointing towards the not knowing mind, the don't know mind. So you really need to feel what it feels like to know something and not be distracted by that feeling. You want to understand what it is, how it feels, but know that you're not being driven by that. And then you also want to be you want to be comfortable with the not knowing. You want to be comfortable with confusion. And get really familiar with how that feels, and then not be confused, not be driven by that confusion. Both of those cases, you want to be aware that your mental state doesn't change the world. There's nothing that you thinking, doing is going to do to change the world. I mean, the world is all completely mechanistic. It's all deterministic. Your mental state is an abstraction from the world. Your mental state is not even... Your mental state isn't necessarily tied to what is physically happening. Your mental state is completely separate. And if you think that your mental state is going to be changing the world, you are thinking too much. And of course, now I'm telling you, I'm thinking myself that the mental state is not going to change the world. I'm also thinking too much. No thought should be had. You want to be completely outside of the realm of thinking. You want to be into the don't know mind. You want to go back to the ordinary state of the mind. And so that you can act before belief, act without attachment to your thoughts, act without attachment to anything, really, essentially at the end. You want to go beyond your beliefs, you want to go beyond your thoughts of what is purposeful, what is meaningful, what is useful, and so on and so forth. We're going to move on to the commentary. Nansen dissolved and melted before Joshu's question, and cannot offer a plausible explanation. Even though Joshu comes to a realization, he must delve into it for another 30 years before he can fully understand it. Very interesting. So Nansen dissolved and melted away before Joshu's question. We're going to interpret that in two different ways. Before, of course, meaning before, like before the question is asked. Where is your mind before I ask? Where are your feet before I ask if they exist? What happens before you think about it? Nansen is gone before the question is asked. Nansen is not there before engaging with the activity. Anything that happens before is not there. There is no before. It's like what happens before the Big Bang? Nothing. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. That's not exactly right, but whatever. You're dissolving away before the question. And of course, in this sense, before the question means in front of the question. So Nansen dissolved while answering the question, but he also could not give a plausible explanation. It's impossible to talk about. That's a big issue here. How can it be talked about on the level of right and wrong? How can you talk about the ordinary mind, which is the mind before judgment, without judging? How can you talk about that on the level of right and wrong? Because right and wrong is judgment. How do you talk about the non-dual when you're stuck with dualities? You can't. Talking is, it's impossible to talk your way into some sort of realization. But in this case, Joshi was talking to a realization. He just didn't know it. Tricky. And it happens a lot. Anyway, I really like the, just something silly. I like the way that the commentary is like, Joshu came to a realization, but he would never know until 30 years later. Very narrative style, very interesting. But we're going to move on to the verse. The spring flowers, the autumn moon, summer breeze, winter snow. If useless things do not clutter your mind, you have the best days of your life. Very beautiful. I feel like that's pretty clear. Yeah, vaguely. It's pretty clear referring to the seasons and how they naturally interact, what they do without thought. The summer, there's just summer breezes. The summer doesn't have to think about it. There's no mind involved with the summer. You don't have to project consciousness over the summer to make it breeze. It just breezes. And the same with the autumn. It's just a moon. It's just a beautiful big moon in the autumn sky, night sky. It's just there. There's nothing you have to think about. The sky doesn't have to think about it. The seasons don't have to think about it. The earth doesn't have to think about it. The spring flowers bloom. There's no thought necessary for it. It is all the ordinary mind, and finally the winter snow. All that stuff is just happening. When you don't have things that clutter your mind, you are in that state where things just happen. Things are just responding naturally. Things are just the ordinary way of things, and there's nothing to add. You don't have to add any of the judgment of good and bad. You just have the best days of your life. Of course, it gets tricky because he's saying best, and we're hearing that as if it's a good thing, but it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's transcending that. And if you want to transcend more goodness and badness, watch these videos. I think they're good, but I'm thinking too much. And you can subscribe to the channel here with this icon. Also join me on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I stream and I talk about this stuff. It's a lot of fun. If you want to ask any questions, you can watch me squirm and trying to answer them, stuck in this dualistic worldview. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'm so glad that you watched this video all the way through. Hope you have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.